Welcome to Pyography Made Easy. I'm Brenda. In this tutorial episode, I am going to show you how to do the moon coasters. This is a very beginner-friendly project that you can burn on leather as I did, or do it on wood. Well, let's get started. The leather. For this project, you will need some vegetable tan leather that is large enough to get four 4-inch square coasters cut out of it. You can cut them from a piece of leather as I am doing, or you can buy them online. Weaver Leather Supply sells a set of 10. You can get them in either square or round format. I'll put a link to their site in the description below. Pattern transfer. I am using compressed graphite sticks to coat the back of a pattern. The pattern was printed on standard lightweight copier paper. Once the pattern is coated with graphite, then place it graphite side down on the leather. Secure with a piece of tape. I recommend using a low-tack paper tape like first aid tape. Then trace over the area you need. Do not use a heavy hand pressure, as you can emboss the leather. There is a free pattern available on my website, and it has 4 different designs that you can choose from. I am doing all 4, and here's how they looked after I traced on the patterns. Now let me explain the white circles. I did these coasters a few years back, and at that time I didn't know that a sharp pencil would cut into the surface of the leather. I've learned a few things since then, and I have a video that covers the basics of pyography on leather. I will put a link to that video in the description below. The wolf. Use a writer pen tip and burn in the trace lines. Always test out the pen tip heat on a piece of scrap leather. Use a light hand pressure when burning to keep the pen tip from sinking down into the leather surface. I am using the end of a plastic handle to rub over the circle line. This doesn't eliminate the cut completely, but it makes it less noticeable. Use the shader of your choice and burn the wolf to a uniform color. It is completely up to you how dark you burn the wolf. I made the wolf on each coaster a different color. The reason was that I was testing out to see what I preferred. I am currently using Colwood's SRS pen tip, and I am using either uniform strokes or circular motion as my burn method. Keep in mind that you can use any shader and any burn method of your preference. We are not trying to create a specific texture. Instead, the goal is just to burn the wolf to a mostly uniform color, and it is your choice how dark that color is. Make sure to rotate the leather as needed to keep your pen tip in optimal position when working along edges. This will help ensure that the edges are clean. I am now using Colwood's SHS pen tip. The only reason for the change was that I had received my pen tip order and I was testing out the new tips. Both the SRS and the SHS come pre-bent and polished. I wanted to see if polishing made a difference with burning. The polished tips do glide over surfaces better, but on wood, I didn't feel like the additional cost was worth it. But I like the polished tips for leather because they're less likely to stick. The moon. To start, use the shader of your choice and burn a loose circular motion over the entire surface of the moon. Loose circular motion means that you can see the underlying leather between the loops on the circular motion. Since we are working on the moon, I do recommend that you keep your burn strokes in the tan color range. Keep in mind that you can use any pen tip for this step, including a ball or a writer pen tip. As you burn the loose circular motion, Vary the size of the loops. Vary how close together the loops are. Vary the direction you're burning in. Reburn over small areas to remove most of the gaps, creating a semi-solid burn patch. Basically, you need to incorporate a lot of variety. The circular motion forms the underlying texture on the moon. After I got a layer of loose circular motion burned over the entire moon's surface, then I started creating the little patches of slightly darker color. These patches had very little underlying leather that showed through. Also, I avoided placing the patches near the wolf. I did this to ensure good contrast between the wolf and the moon. Switch to a writer pen tip and draw in crater shapes randomly over the moon's surface. Vary the size and shape of the craters. Inside of the larger craters, you can place one or two smaller ones. Afterwards, apply a layer of tiny dots over the entire moon's surface. You can make this super simple and just apply a layer of dots. Or you can increase the complexity a little by creating shadows. Creating shadows is a matter of darkening up a few of the crater edges. So let's cover this in a bit more detail. First, pick a light source. I chose to place the sun or light source below and to the right of the moon. The yellow arrow is indicating the direction that the sunlight is traveling. Craters have lips on them. The lips or edges stick up above the surface of the moon. This means that the front edge of the crater is lit up, so apply fewer dots along the front. The yellow lines along the crater are indicating where the sunlight is striking, and fewer dots should be. The back side of that front edge will be in shadows. So along that back side, you apply more dots to create a shadow. The blue line on the craters indicates the shadows. Now let's examine the back edge of the craters. The back edge has the same thing happening that the front does. So the front of it receives light and should get fewer dots applied. The back side is in shadows, so needs more dots. Another thing to keep in mind is that the darker you create the shadow, the deeper the crater will seem. The longer the shadows are, the more the crater will appear to rise above the moon's surface. If you choose to add the shadows, be aware that you do not have to use just dots to create them. What I do is darken up the shadow line along the crater edge. Then I use circular motion to create the shadows. The circular motion is smaller and more closed than the circular motion used to create the base layer of texture on the moon. Just like wood, you can reburn over leather to darken it up. So in some areas, I reburn over the shadows to make them darker. As I said before, the darker the shadows are, the deeper the crater will appear. On the flip side, craters that have little to no shadows will appear very shallow. One important thing to do when adding shadows is to make sure they are all oriented in the same direction. With my shadows, they're oriented more along the lines of the top and bottom of each crater. If I was to add some that were along the left and right side, it would not look right. Whatever direction you choose, keep them all going in that same direction. As you can see, I work in little sections at a time. I draw in a few craters, add the dots and the shadows, and then I move on to a new section. You can burn in the moon the same way, or you could do all of one step first before doing the next step. With this scenario, you would draw in all of the craters, then add a layer of dots, and finally add any shadows. That's assuming you're including them. The last thing I did was darken a few of the shadows and add darker tiny dots randomly over the moon's surface. These dots are also a little bigger. If some of the dots are too dark, then use the edge of a sharp knife and very gently scrape away a little of the color. The background. I am brushing color onto the background. I am using a combination of black water stain by EcoFlow and Canyon Tan leather dye by EcoFlow. What is the difference between a dye and a water stain? I have no idea. It's probably a no-no to mix the two. They are both water-based and made by the same company, so I figured it shouldn't be too bad. I didn't want the background to be jet black. The color I ended up with was a light to medium brown, but the color can be reapplied until the desired darkness level is achieved. As you can see, I used a wide brush for the open areas and a smaller brush for the areas that needed more precision. After applying the color, I let the coasters sit for 15 minutes. Then I lightly rubbed over them with a clean paper towel to remove any excess. After that was done, I let them sit overnight. Out of curiosity, I did paint one of the dogs with the black stain. I was curious if the stain would adhere to the pyrography. It worked just fine and didn't come off. If you haven't figured it out yet, the leather coasters was one big experiment for me. The very last thing I did on the background was use the tip of a sharp knife to scrape away some of the dye. This was done to create distant stars. Here's how it looked once I was finished. I'm not sure I like it. The cork. I am using leather cement and applying a thick layer over the cork. Then I use a brush to work it around the surface, making sure the edges are thoroughly covered. Then I applied a thin layer of glue onto the back of the coaster. Yes, I did this before I applied the stain on the coaster because I wasn't sure how messy that step would be. Next, place the two glue sides together and press firmly. Pay special attention to the edges. You want to make sure it has a good seal. Afterwards, place a clean flat object like a piece of wood over the leather and weight it down. Let it sit until the glue sets up. I let mine sit for a couple of hours. I did check the edges to make sure the glue had set up. It was perfect. The sealants. I did up some test panels and subjected them to heat. And then I subjected them to water in an effort to find a sealant or finish that would work well for drink coasters. What I discovered is that the combination of Resolene with either snowproof or satin sheen worked very well. Here's the test panel angled so you can see how shiny the satin sheen is. I brushed on a layer of the Resolene and let that dry overnight. Then I used a soft cloth to apply the snowproof. I picked the snowproof because it wasn't as shiny as the satin sheen. Well, that's it for this tutorial. I hope you liked the project and I hope that you'll try it. And if you do and you think it's easy, let me know because I'd be curious. Well, thank you so much for watching my video and I will see you next week. Thank you again for watching my video. If you liked the video and found the information helpful, then please subscribe to my channel. That would help me out a lot. Well, thank you again, and have a great week.